Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, and respected colleagues, today I address a subject that lies at the intersection of energy security, international trade, and geopolitics. The world is witnessing an era of rapid realignment, where traditional alliances are tested and new partnerships are forged. Against this backdrop, Russia has announced that it possesses what it calls special mechanisms to ensure the continuous supply of oil to India, even amidst Western sanctions and global pressures. This declaration is more than an energy trade announcement. It is a message of strategic partnership. It reflects how nations adapt to global shifts, how economics meets politics, and how the energy lifeline remains at the heart of national interest. Energy is the lifeblood of modern economies. For a country like India, which is the third largest oil consumer in the world, securing affordable and reliable crude oil is not just a matter of economics. It is a matter of national survival and security. India imports more than 85% of its crude oil. Any disruption, whether due to war, sanctions, or market volatility, can send shockwaves across our economy. Rising oil prices mean inflation in food, transport, electricity, and every single household expense. Therefore, maintaining strong energy supply chains is crucial. Russia, on the other hand, is the world's second-largest oil exporter. And following the Ukraine conflict and subsequent Western sanctions, Moscow has had to pivot its energy exports eastward. India, with its vast demand, has emerged as one of Russia's most important energy partners. Now, what does Russia mean when it says it has special mechanisms to ensure oil supply to India? First, it refers to alternative payment systems. Since Western sanctions have restricted the use of US dollars and SWIFT-based banking for Russian oil sales, both nations are exploring rupee-ruble trade, third-country currencies, and even barter-style settlements. Second, it indicates the use of shadow fleets of tankers vessels, not bound by Western insurance companies or monitoring agencies. These tankers transport oil discreetly, ensuring uninterrupted supply despite sanctions. Third, Moscow has offered deep discounts on crude prices, making Russian oil highly attractive for Indian refiners. This is not just a short-term deal, but a long-term alignment of interests. Together, these mechanisms allow Russia to bypass Western restrictions while India secures its energy at affordable prices. For India, these special arrangements mean more than just cheap oil. They symbolize energy security. India gets steady supplies even in times of crisis. Economic advantage. Discounted oil helps India control inflation and strengthen its industries. Geopolitical autonomy. India demonstrates that it can act in its own national interest, independent of Western pressure. Stronger bilateral ties. This partnership cements India-Russia relations beyond defense and into energy security, trade, and investment. By standing firm on its decision to keep buying Russian oil, India sends a message: our energy security will not be compromised by external pressure. But this arrangement is not without challenges. The United States and European Union have expressed displeasure, urging India to reduce dependency on Russian crude. There are logistical risks in transporting oil through non-traditional routes. International insurance companies often refuse to cover ships carrying Russian oil. Moreover, critics argue that by buying Russian oil, India indirectly supports Moscow's war economy. Yet India's response has been clear and consistent. We will act in accordance with our national interests. When we analyze Russia's creation of special mechanisms to supply oil to India, it is essential to understand that this development does not happen in isolation. It occurs within a complex regional web of competition, cooperation, and shifting alignments across Asia. India, Russia, China, and other regional players are all intertwined in an evolving energy and strategic network that has implications not only for bilateral trade, but also for the regional order in Asia and beyond. India's increasing energy reliance on Russian supplies has the potential to reshape regional dynamics, especially in South Asia, Central Asia, and the Indo-Pacific, where geopolitical rivalries are already sharp. At the heart of this lies the India-China equation. While India and China remain rivals on many fronts, from border disputes to strategic influence across Asia, both countries share one undeniable reality. Their economies are energy hungry. China has long been Russia's biggest partner in oil and gas trade, benefiting from discounted Russian energy supplies, especially after Western sanctions limited Moscow's access to European markets. India's deeper engagement with Russia through oil imports brings New Delhi closer, at least in economic terms, to Beijing's existing partnership with Moscow. On the one hand, this parallel energy partnership could foster a subtle convergence of interests. Both India and China want access to affordable energy to power their growth. Both are willing to bypass Western pressures when their national interests dictate it. In this sense, Moscow could serve as a bridge, bringing India and China into occasional alignment despite their tensions. Yet, this same scenario creates friction. If Russia tilts too far toward China, India may perceive that Moscow is no longer a neutral, trusted partner. India has historically seen Russia as a balancing factor in its rivalry with Beijing. Russian arms sales to India, for example, have long given New Delhi confidence in maintaining a stable deterrent. But if India sees Russia increasingly locked into China's orbit due to overdependence on Chinese trade and investment, then India may worry about Moscow's neutrality. The oil trade therefore becomes not just an economic question, but also a political signal. Does Russia value India independently? Or does it see New Delhi as merely an additional buyer in a China-centered strategy? This development is not happening in isolation. It has global implications. For the West, it challenges the effectiveness of sanctions, proving that alternative trade networks can sustain large economies. For Asia, it strengthens the idea of multipolarity, where nations like India, China, and Russia play a bigger role in shaping the global order. For the Global South, it sends a message that countries can carve out independent paths and resist pressure from dominant powers. This is a reshaping of global trade architecture, a silent revolution in how energy and finance work. Of course, India cannot afford to alienate either side. On one hand, it values its strategic partnership with the U.S. and your key partners for technology, defense, and investment. On the other, it relies on Russia for energy and defense supplies. Thus, India walks a careful line. It insists on diversification of supply chains, buying from the Middle East, Africa, and the U.S., while also securing Russian oil. This balancing act is a demonstration of strategic autonomy, a hallmark of Indian foreign policy since independence. In conclusion, the announcement that Russia has special mechanisms to ensure oil supply to India is not just about barrels of crude. It is about trust, resilience, and strategic foresight. India, as a rising global power, understands that energy security equals national security. Russia, facing Western isolation, understands that partnership with India equals relevance and stability. Together, they are not merely conducting trade, they are reshaping the rules of global energy diplomacy. Ladies and gentlemen, the world is watching this partnership. Some see it as defiance, others as pragmatism. But one thing is clear. In the evolving landscape of the 21st century, nations that adapt, innovate, and protect their core interests will lead the way. India and Russia, through these special mechanisms, are writing a new chapter in that story. Thank you.